some sort of race-baiting strategy. Really what happened is America, under policies that allowed the free market to move, America was able to develop as a people. And because we were able to develop our infrastructure, we were able to develop people's access to that infrastructure, people were able to succeed. Not because immigrants are suddenly good people. That makes no sense, and there's no empirical evidence to substantiate that.
Bravo.
Actually,
are you finished with your time?
Where Mr. Petrosky is going to say something.
Yeah, and also keep in mind, where the topic right now is on illegal immigration. Legal immigrants, yes, like on average, their crime rates are lower, but the ones who are here illegally, because they don't have to go through any background check, because here's the thing, if you're trying to come here legally, you have to pass a background check, and if you have any sort of criminal record at all, you're not getting in. But if you come here illegally, you go past any background check or any way for them to verify whether you'd be a good candidate to be in this country or not, then of course, like on average, you're going to be much more likely to commit crimes. In fact, a lot of people who do come here illegally, they're actually part of transnational gangs, and that's why you see crime spike in a lot of places, like in Santa Ana recently, for example, and other cities as well that have employed sanctuary city legislation. So, like on the broad sense, what you're saying might be true.
Rob Petrosian is speaking at this time. He's an immigrant from Armenia.
I would like to propose the 2007 study on immigration that reported that immigrant men, both illegal and legal immigrant men, ages 18 to 39, was 0.7% incarcerated, while the native-born men from the same age group was 3.5%.
And when we're talking about immigrants in our economy, specifically undocumented immigrants, since you're looking for that kind of clarification, undocumented immigrants in the United States make up a disproportionate representation in our labor force compared to their native-born counterparts. So compared to the population of undocumented immigrants that exist in this country, they represent a disproportionate number of people in our workforce. So Rob, you're an economics major, so you might appreciate the study that has been done on immigration. So a lot of economists that analyze illegal immigration and undocumented immigration look at the labor gap that exists in our labor force.
Legal and then undocumented?
Skill, where there's a lot of jobs, particularly in the service industry, that native-born Americans simply do not fill. Undocumented immigrants fill that at a disproportionate rate. And actually, undocumented immigrants in our workforce increases the availability of middle-class and higher-paying jobs simply because the amount of low-wage jobs in our workforce enables more higher-paying jobs higher up the management scale.
Are we allowed to respond to that, or?
Not right now, unless you have to know at the time.
Oh, I know.
Okay, then we're going to move into another set of cross-examination. However, since last time Republicans asked the bulk of the questions, Democrats, you have the floor to ask the first question.
Got it.
Why do you think the use of the term illegal immigrant is acceptable?
All right, so I'm going to make it clear. You can skew words however you want going back in time. I can say anything. I can even make Hawaiian a slur. You know why? Because originally that's an English word, so apparently it's offensive. I'm going to tell you why. Because they're committing an illegal action. There's specific statutory code that shows so. And let me make it clear. If you break the law, you're illegal. So if I go and rob a mirror over there, then I'm committing an illegal action, and I should be tried as such. That's common sense. So I'm advocating for this because it's pointless for us to spend an endless amount of time arguing diction and words when we should be advocating policy. Because at the end of the day, your constituents are not worried about if somebody's offended. They're worried about if America becomes a better place, something that the Democrats have never done.
Bravo.
And also keep in mind that illegal alien is the legal term that's used by the U.S. government, and that's also the term that we agreed on before this debate. So I don't think it makes any sense for us to devolve into a battle over diction. We should be battling over actual policy as was agreed.
Wow.
So, by the way, sorry, we forgot to mention this earlier. We're going to ask that there's no audience interaction until we give you a mic during the audience question portion. So please avoid clapping, snapping, or especially heckling. Anyone who's heckling will be given a warning, and the second time we'll politely ask them to leave the debate. Thank you.
term used, this was derived, as Cassius mentioned earlier, in 1939 as a British slur towards Jews who were fleeing Nazi Germany. So
That's
the
a
current
lie.
policy is developed through, based off of racial fears. Though it may be legal, that does not mean it's not something that shouldn't be changed.
All right, so is
And so you're talking about legal terminology. We also want to remind you of other points that we've made in our opening statement, specifically the Supreme Court case in 2012 that I cited about Arizona's immigration law. And in that law, they specifically were talking about undocumented migrants in our country. And that court, in the spirit of that decision, we're saying that the presence of one's body in this country is not illegal. And that's a point that I'm going to reiterate time and time again if you continue to use that word, because the existence of somebody in this country, as opposed to their physical actions that they've taken, is not lawful. So when you talk, hold up. So when you talk about illegal immigrant, that is a legal term, and you're misusing that term. So, and just to
wait, we misused the term that the law stipulates. That is what you're saying.
just to refute a point that Rob made earlier, in 2016, in April 2016, the Library of Congress and the Congressional Budget Office stopped using the term illegal alien because they recognized that that term not only implies a negative connotation on people in this country, but that it's simply not accurate.
No kidding.
Yeah, okay, so I'm going to specify that right now. The reason we talk about the difference between illegal and unauthorized is a statutory problem. That's the reason those officers use it, not because they're race-baiting people. There's absolutely no evidence to substantiate that. Now let's look at the other claim you tried to make, about somehow we're Nazis. That's probably the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Allow me to clarify. We've been using the term illegal immigrant since the founding of our country. It was debate when the Federalists began to talk. It was debate up until the time of the Civil War. In fact, actually during that time, there was the Know Nothing movement, which occurred under Abraham Lincoln, and had the Civil War not distracted, we would have seen a significant discourse happening at that time. So it occurred way before the 1930s. I don't know what you think immigration is a problem that just came about in the 1930s? That's ridiculous. Allow me to continue on.
Thank you, that is time. Thank you very much. At this point, we're now going to pose a few questions from the moderators for each debater team. So each question will be intended to be answered by both teams. We'll begin with the first question. So many Republican figures have regarded the so-called anchor baby concept as a potential to legitimately undermine immigration enforcement, while opponents on the left have regarded birthright citizenship as being rooted in the 14th Amendment of the Constitution and regarded the anchor babies issue as a theory or a myth. Several Democratic figures have expressed that the issue, in their view, is keeping families together, while the Republicans have claimed that this leads to many legal discrepancies. My question is, should the children of undocumented immigrants legally become U.S. citizens at birth, and how should the presence of these children affect policy regarding the amnesty of undocumented parents?
Wow, that's a good question.
For this question, we'll have the Republicans begin, and for the next question, we'll have the Democrats begin.
All right, so there's two parts to this question. Question one is a philosophical one. Should it? And part two of it is it? Is it? Yes, because the Supreme Court defined it that way, and the Republican Party, unlike other parties, does believe in enforcing what the courts say. Now the question on should it? No, they shouldn't be. And the reason is quite simple. When you have birthright citizenship, you incentivize people to come here illegally, have their children, and give them American citizenship. American citizenship should be something you fight for, something you strive for. Immigrants shouldn't be granted just based on birthship. Now, do I think there should be an integration process? Absolutely. There should be an integration process. But that integration process does not encourage just giving it out willy-nilly. And I know the Democrats are going to try to race bait and say, oh, this disproportionately affects Hispanics. The answer to that is no. It has nothing to do with Mexicans, Hispanics. It's not a race question. It is a matter of public policy and respect this American flag and for the American citizenship that is granted to us.
In your answer provided, you claim that American citizenship should be something fought for, not something provided for. Did you fight for your American citizenship? You being born in the United States, you have been born on American grounds. You have been raised in America with American laws
Democrats are pretty weak at this.
You've gone to American schools. You've been opened up to the opportunities that are within America. They should be granted to you. If you were born here, you cannot change the fact that you were born here.
And we'd also like to reiterate the point, when you're talking about immigrants in this country, specifically undocumented immigrants, the children of undocumented immigrants, parents who came here without documentation, what you might call, they didn't enter the country through our legal system, their children are more than twice as likely to go to college as American native-born children. Furthermore, immigrants are also entrepreneurs. They're 30% more likely to start their own businesses than native-born citizens.
Yeah. Am I allowed on that?
If you guys don't, each team does get 30 seconds for a rebuttal.
All right, so that's an incredibly skewed statistic because that just counts legal immigrants, people who came here and worked their hearts. And when it comes to did I fight for my American citizenship, you're goddamn right. I would fight every day for my American citizenship. And if we went to war, our people would fight for it. The problem is when it comes down to illegal aliens, we don't create that establishment of citizenship. It's not the cultural icons that make Americans Americans. It's part of what comes here about an established system, things that we can definitely attach to. And I'm sorry if we can't attach to America as a culture, but America is more. America is something greater than just a random placard given out.
30 seconds.
Who's to say that someone born here, who has lived here their entire life, would not stand up for America, would not hold pride in America, and people who are born here recognize themselves as American. They have lived here their entire lives. They hold those morals. They would fight for their freedom. They appreciate the opportunity to have to live in this country and be able to not have an oppressive government coming down on them.
Thank you very much, debaters. We'll now move to the second question. Many Democrats have argued that bringing undocumented immigrants legally into the workforce would help our economy by increasing consumption and tax revenue. Republicans have claimed, on the other hand, that by granting a path to citizenship for illegal immigrants, we are encouraging legal action and inciting increased competition for blue-collar workers, leading to an overall negative economic impact towards Americans. My question is, in which ways would your specific plans assist the American economy, and why would it be more beneficial overall than the plans of the opposing side? We'll begin this time with the Democrats.
It has been noted that immigrants, regardless of their status, fill the growing gap between the low-skilled jobs and the shrinking pool of native-born Americans who are willing to take such jobs. There was a specific case where jobs were opened up and no immigrants were there to fill them, as they were noted that they were not allowed to hire any undocumented immigrants.
Good.
And no American citizens came to replace those jobs. And in turn, they had to get 2,000 workers from
Everybody, this is at UCI Irvine.
system.
College Democrats, college
The
Republicans.
case Nicole is talking about is the 2011 immigration law that was passed in Georgia. This is a common case study that scholars from across the aisle refer to when we're talking about the immigration debate. A Republican governor enacted strict immigration restrictions, and as a result of that, there was a huge shortage of labor in the labor market, particularly in the agricultural sector. And the state, in just a period of 1 year, saw a $140 million decline in agricultural GDP as a direct result of this. There was a huge labor shortage. And Nicole mentions that they brought in prisoners to do the work, and even the prisoners left the jobs because they were not willing to do that work. It is good economics to have immigrant labor.
You have to pay him a proper salary.
So, reason why we don't support amnesty and like to get back on your first point, there's nothing that says you can't have a legal guest worker program because that's a legal work visa that you're allowed to give out. And
I prefer mechanization.
Will be built that way. And but also keep in mind, in terms of the rest of the economy, amnesty hurts low-skilled workers the most. The legal immigrants already here and people who are like very downtrodden. An influx of 12 million illegal immigrants giving them amnesty is going to completely destroy that job market. Unemployment is going to skyrocket. And additionally, big number that I'd like to mention, I said it before, I said it again, $2.3 trillion. That's how much it's going to cost to pass amnesty and to get everybody in, give them legal status, and try to integrate them into the country. That's a big number. That's going to destroy our fiscal market. It's going to destroy mortgage rates, interest rates, and that's going to hit everybody. And that's not going to make the economy better at all. And worst of all, more amnesty is just going to lead to more illegal immigration. We've seen this in about 2013, in 2014, when during the times where there were talks about amnesty being passed in Congress, there were about 50,000 unaccompanied minors who were exploited by human traffickers to try to get them across into the U.S. So this is just kicking the can down the road. And when you pass amnesty, you incentivize even more illegal immigration, and you never solve the problem. You end up talking about this again and again, and you just create even more people who are in the shadows and can't find work and just become a burden on the rest of society, both economically and also in terms of crime.
Okay, we will now move into our mid-debate summary. So each team will have, once again, 4 minutes to sort of present their case thus far, or make any additions to that case for the audience, followed by another round of cross-examination, just as in the beginning. We're going to start with the Republicans on this time.
Share this video. This is the kind of debate we need to see.
Perfect.
And we need to stop amnesty.
All right, so let's go over something first. Their entire case is about moral decision-making. Allow me to ask you one thing. First, there are a lot of great legal immigrants who came to this country. People who worked through the system. People who worked long and hard to achieve their legal statuses. Rob is from Russia. He's the immigrant here. I'm from the Hawaiian Islands, and yes, we weren't originally immigrants, but we understand what it's actually like to be a minority, unlike, ironically, our opponents. But what you're doing is devaluing them. You're saying anyone should be allowed to stroll into this country and claim to be American. You're saying that criminals, thieves, which, by the way, you haven't rebutted any of the statistics on that, should be allowed to be the same as those hardworking immigrants who earned it. Then, let's talk about your plan to systemically impoverish 12 million people permanently. Since the 1960s, under President Johnson and his, quote, war on poverty, the American government spent over $22 trillion.
You should mention what Johnson said about black people.
Nothing. The poverty rate has remained at 14.5%. There is no solvency behind what the government does. And what you're proposing is allowing all these people to enter the labor market, all of whom will be impoverished and we put upon the social welfare system, only, I don't know, probably to vote Democrat. That's what the plan is. Allow me to take a quote from Ronald Reagan. In this present crisis, government is not solution. Government is the problem. And that will always be the case. I would love for you to name me one poverty program that the government actually helped people with. A poverty program that did not incentivize people to enter the labor market. On the other hand, the Republicans have had a specific advocacy in how we plan to solve this with an integration mechanism. Individual development accounts, which were implemented in 1997 in areas like Michigan, for instance, have had solvency in integrating people while encouraging them to keep jobs.
Michigan went red in 2016.
Unlike the Democrat plan, which permanently impoverishes people. And this has been shown to statistically work. Individual development accounts have been shown that 35% of those participants own businesses, 84% own homes, and 80% go to college. It empirically works because it incentivizes people to join the market, and it doesn't disillusion them to permanent poverty, which is what the Democrats, at the end of the day, are wanting to do.
Please keep sharing
this. They never really brought up any statistics which have how immigrants help the economy. Now, there was one. They cited a 2007 study. There are several problems with this study, though, that academics have skewed. For one, they have gratefully overlooked discussing how they came about these conclusions. So allow me to tell you. When people take these studies, they look at county areas, not cities, not individual communities. When you look at county areas, you have skewed statistics. That's like comparing Huntington Beach and Santa Ana and observing, oh, Huntington Beach crime went down. I bet the people in Santa Ana are committing less crime. That makes absolutely no sense. Those studies are created that way in order to induce people to come to false conclusions. Our studies that we cite look at individual communities, not just random clusters that they happen to form for their statistics. It's a massive problem in academia. We need to talk about the methodology behind these studies. Then look on top the economic argument. Their only economic argument is, oh, it'll damage the labor sector. Rob already brought up how we're solving this. For one, guest visa programs. We can control what the economy needs there. Second off, we already talked about integration process. That integration process brings people into the economy. Third off, we specifically brought up about how we're going to have enforcement mechanisms to allow people to access the labor market in an equitable manner, something that illegal immigration doesn't allow. It only spams immigrants, basically spams workers into the agricultural industry. And sure, that might help us in the short term, but we're stealing jobs from American citizens. So I emphasize the Republican platform very easily. Jobs, jobs, and jobs. Because at the end of the day, people aren't looking for this race discourse. They're looking for actual plans.
Thank you, Republicans. That is the end of your time. Democrats, at this point, you will have a chance to present your summary and/or give any arguments or responses to arguments that were proposed by the Republicans throughout the debate so far.
So first, we'd just like to start by breaking down some myths that we're hearing from the Republicans, particularly regarding undocumented immigrants and their composition in our labor force. Undocumented immigrants comprise a disproportionately large percentage of our labor force, unlike what our Republican colleagues are claiming, and this is relative to the overall population in the United States. Hundreds of thousands of immigrants are here working and employed in the United States. These same people that you say legalizing would cause a drain on our system, they're already working here. They're already doing these jobs. You cannot say that legalizing them would cause that because they're already working here. By you claiming our amnesty program will somehow cause an influx of jobs into the economy, first of all, we're not saying that permanent amnesty forever. We're not advocating open borders. Anybody on both sides of the aisle understands that that is a ridiculous proposition. What we're arguing for is a legalization of current undocumented migrants that are living in this country, people that are already working here and doing jobs. And you want statistics? We got statistics for you, Kimo. I know you love statistics. In 2010, we had 8.4 million undocumented immigrants employed in the United States. In that same time period, they represented 5.2% of the U.S. labor force, although they were only 3.7% of the U.S. population. So again, undocumented immigrants disproportionately comprise a labor market in our country, unlike any other demographic, even native-born workers. That discrepancy is not something.
That's a great point. Morally. Oh, I do a great job. So that means it's okay for me to break the law.
I would also like to call attention to the concept of them taking from us already citizens. Undocumented immigrants do not qualify for welfare, food stamps, Medicaid, and most other public benefits. Most of these programs require proof of legal immigration, and they have to have been here for about 5 years in order to receive them. So they currently are not taking away from us, even though they are already working in these jobs, providing for us, and
so statistics consistently support the argument that U.S.-born children of immigrants, undocumented immigrants, are more likely to go to college, they're less likely to live in poverty, and equally likely to be homeowners as the average American. These people,
oh my
that you are saying the legalization of would cause a drain on our system, they're already here, they're productive members of our society, and we believe that it's our job as representatives of the politics of our country to acknowledge them.
I can't believe this. They shouldn't even be owning homes.
Paying taxes, they make up $10.6 billion worth of state and local taxes. Providing them amnesty will only contribute more. This will make them be required to pay more taxes and contribute more into our economy.
2 minutes for cross-examination. We're going to give start to the Republicans.
Sure, so you said they're contributing money to the economy, yet I clearly read you evidence that shows illegal immigrants by themselves take over $100 billion per year. You say they only contribute 10. So let's do some math. What is 100 minus 10? What is 100 minus 10? That's my question.
90.
Right. So the net deficit would be 90 billion, right? Right? It's basic math. If you're giving in 10 and you're taking out 100, then there's a $90 billion deficit.
Correct.
Could we agree to that?
I think that in order to agree to that, I would like to see the breakdown of the 10, or of the 100,000 prison and see where that's coming from and where their source is.
Well, wait, so you're claiming we're lying? I'll give you our source. It's the Congressional Budget Office. Now, I know Republicans sometimes disagree with it, but I never heard Democrats thought they're claiming fake news. That's a new thing. So, do you have any evidence to substantiate that illegal immigrants on balance are providing more to the economy than the state?
So let's talk about illegal immigrants in our economy and what they get from us. Non-citizen immigrant adults and children are about 20% less likely to be signed up for Medicaid than their poor native counterparts. They're also 37% less likely to apply for food stamps, according to a 2013 study by the Cato Institute. And Kimo, I know that you have a holy obsession with the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, but it's important to keep in mind that this is a partisan office. The administration changes just like the makeup of the House of Representatives. That's the appointment.
That came under President Obama.
As a Democrat, I will acknowledge, as anybody here, as any national politically minded person, you guys have problems with the Republican president, we can disagree with the Democratic president.
Okay,
So
fair enough.
associating those
Get
members
used to
just because they're Obama, therefore we're wrong, that's an invalid argument.
Didn't you guys say earlier that that illegal immigrants don't use Medicare and food stamps, and you said just now that they're less likely to use it, but that means they still use it, right?
Thank you.
They shouldn't use it at all.
That is time on the cross-examination. We will now move
You
into
can thank Ricardo
another
Lara
session
for that.
of some moderator questions. This time we're going to have College Democrats answer first. And both teams will have 2 minutes and 30 seconds again. So let's take a step back from the domestic issue at hand and address sort of some international affairs regarding immigration and amnesty. The United States is a massive player on the global stage, and our immigration policy affects that standing, especially with regards to the presence and consideration of refugees and other immigrants fleeing war-torn countries. How will your plan help America's position globally, or how will your opponent's plan damage that reputation?
So a position that we've consistently been making, and that
Save some battery for me. I want to debate these people at the end. Oh, sure.
That when we allow people in this country a pathway to citizenship, especially those that are undocumented and already working here, that is good economics for American workers and for American businesses.
We as a nation have also prided ourselves in helping others around us, providing them safe places when they have been restricted of their human rights. It is part of the American moral to provide people their human rights and their natural born rights. And in internationally accepting international immigrants, asylum seekers, we are standing by those morals.
Okay. Right, so in terms of whether our position will help the U.S. globally, I think it will, because our idea for how we want to do legal immigration is we simply want the best that the world has to offer, and we want to make sure that they come in legally. And in order to do that, we need to make sure that our immigration system is merit-based. So everybody applies. If somebody happens to have a distinct skill that they can offer to the country to like help America and help themselves, yes, we want those people there. And I think that objectively, that is the policy that we would want to pursue for the well-being of this country. The Democrats' policy of just giving amnesty to whoever happens to be here, whether or not they pass the background check or whether or not they essentially cut in line to get here ahead of people who are much more qualified, like it's kind of interesting. The left likes to use the word privilege a lot. Why is it not also an argument of privilege to allow priority to people who cross into the country illegally just because they happen to be closer, whereas somebody who's probably facing an even worse situation in their own homes, they have no hope of getting to this country legally because all the spaces are taken up by the people who would get amnesty. Frankly, I find it completely unfair. Like for example, when I came here to this country, I waited a little bit over 5 years for my family to get a visa, and most immigrants who are in my position, they spend even more time, up to 10 years. So why is it fair for them to wait even more time so that we could grant amnesty to people who can't even pass a background check and are probably criminals?
I agree with you, Debbie.
Fundamentally unfair. And as for helping others and human rights, like, we have sympathy for people who want to come in, but we have to make sure that the people coming in are secure and that we can verify who they are. And given some of the terrorist attacks committed by refugees elsewhere, I think that the country should put its own safety first and make sure the people are vetted, which at this stage we simply cannot do.
Thank you. Okay, so at this point we'll now have 30 seconds responses from each group, beginning with the Democrats.
I would like to reference back to the idea that them committing committers is an assumption. Also, I would like to say that you can't just assume that the people who are already here are not also fleeing horrible circumstances in their home countries. Providing amnesty to the people who are already within the United States is not only people who are just coming here to work. There's plenty of people who are also here searching for a safe home away from their country of origin.
And when we talk about privilege, and you mentioned privilege, so I'd like to talk about undocumented immigration as a sort of privilege. Our immigration policy disproportionately favors, with the strict requirements to enter this country, disproportionately favors the wealthy, privileged residents of other countries, and it does not help the underprivileged.
Second question, this one will start with the college Republicans.
Do we get a rebuttal? We get a rebuttal.
Oh, yes, sorry. My bad.
All right, so I'm going to make this clear. Our policy is America first. They claim we can't assume people are committing crime. I gave you a study that showed you specifically in sanctuary cities, rapes doubled. It's literally the term of crime. Yeah, I just gave you the study in our first speech, and I know you like to cherry pick counties, but I look at studies that look at cities. Now, yes, your own authors tend to skew the studies because they don't know how to write properly, but what I'm saying is look at the data. Now, secondly, when we come down to economic hegemony, look at the United States and Mexico. They don't respect our country.
Thank you. That is time.
Perfect.
So, as I said before, now I'm going to ask one more question, and that's going to start with the college Republicans. We're going to follow the same format, after which we will open it to the audience. So, finally, I would like to ask a question pertaining to UCI. President Trump recently claimed that he would defund cities and institutions which claim to be either sanctuary cities or sanctuary campuses. The ASUCI Senate has also been sort of toying around with the idea of making the school a sanctuary campus in order to protect our undocumented students. However, this could threaten our federal funding, and we are unsure at this time what that ramification would be. What is your stance on this issue, and how will your plan secure the best education and funding for the largest number of students and faculty possible?
You get 2 minutes.
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to put it simply. The Senate is idiotic. Because why would you pass a policy that would defund UCI? It literally does nothing. All it is, oh, let's just talk against Donald Trump. That's all that policy implies. The policy doesn't do anything. All it is a middle finger to the Republican establishment. That's all it does. And it threatens every student. Now, what do I think we should do with undocumented students in UCI? Deport them. Simple. That's what the law says. So that's what we're going to do. That is simply putting America first. Now, yes, they can come back, but they must come back legally. So when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, we're going to pass policy that follows something called the federal government comes first, not some random student government. The federal government has a right to make laws, and the student government does not have a right to impede upon those laws. They can't suddenly decide, oh, we're going to go violate the Constitution. They can't do that. That's not within their jurisdiction. This is insanity. You're allowing the student government to take over federal law. And I just want to point out how crazy that is, and to the point that we've even got there.
And also, I'd like to add that the ACCI Senate wouldn't even have any jurisdiction in this, and all it would be doing is putting it's going to put a fiscal target on our backs because we're going to lose a lot of funding. And this is funding that's supposed to benefit all of UCI. And kind of interesting that ACCI is proposing this too, because ACCI is more or less going bankrupt recently. And they've had to increase their fees lately, but I bet they're still going to have some problems, especially if Trump follows through with this, which he probably will. And also,
I want a lot of likes for that one.
This as extreme virtue signaling that they have no power to actually enforce. and they try to think that a slap on the face is worth a shot in the head, more or less.
Yep.
Thank you. The College Democrats now have 2 minutes to answer the question.
So when we're talking about sanctuary cities, campuses, cities, or even states like California declaring sanctuary status, there is no legal grounds for the federal government to remove funding from a place when they declare sanctuary status. When the federal government in particular gives funding to a locality, whether it be a municipal locality or a state, unless they impose conditions on that funding from the get-go, it is illegal and unconstitutional for them to withhold that funding. So if the current administration, as they have threatened, were to go through with defunding programs for sanctuary cities, or withholding federal funds from those cities, that would be unconstitutional. And that's because it violates the principle of federalism and local control that exists in our Constitution. Local governments are given certain authorities and rights that the federal government cannot impede on.
That's true.
And one of those rights is what I just mentioned about funding for cities. You cannot impose conditions on funding after the fact, particularly when it comes to law enforcement, infrastructure, and other priorities.
All right, so there's something called the Federal Supremacy Clause, which any basic first-year law student would know. What it means is you can't pass a policy that violates government law. This isn't after the fact. They've been illegal for a while. Why do you think President Obama went and deported 3 million of them? Because it's been illegal. It's been illegal, and it continues to be illegal. And the student government has no right to impede upon the federal government's jurisdiction to enforce immigration laws.
Amen.
That's common sense. Now let's also look at the equivalent of what you're saying and be applied to a legal aspect. What you're saying is we can pass whatever we want, and it doesn't matter because the federal government has no jurisdiction over it. That's ridiculous.
We have given the
Yes.
The student government, though, does have the right to stand up for its students. That is part of its job. Regardless of the impact that it will make in the future, it is their job to stand up for the people within the university. As we have such a large population of undocumented students here who have worked just as hard as the rest of us have, if not even harder, it is important that we have a student government who represents us and will stand up for us regardless of what is being imposed.
How does that
Thank
make
you.
the best interest
Thank you
of
very much.
Mexico?
That's the end of time for this question. We're now going to move into audience questions. We're going to take approximately 20 minutes on this, although if there are a lot of questions, we'll try to answer as many as possible. But if the interest of time comes first, then we will have to cut some of them short. Just to clarify how this is going to work, so as you're all doing, you're already raising your hands. So this is how it's going to work. You're going to raise your hands. We're going to bring the mic to you. You're going to ask your question, and then we are going to come back. You're not going to have the opportunity for a follow-up, unfortunately. If you wish to continue, you'll have to ask a second question.
We also ask that you keep it topical. Any questions that we see as not constructive to the topic of this debate, or just to be sort of something unrelated, we will just reject that question.
Yes, so also no personal attacks to the debaters. This is kept on topic, thank you. So we'll just begin, I guess, right over here.
Hi, I have a question for both of you. It's kind of on the same topic, but I think it's different.
She's the president of the club. What about everybody else?
Yeah. How would Trump get Mexico to pay for the wall? For the college Democrats, why would the wall never be paid for?
We'll start on this. We're going to amend Rule 130.121 to redefine applicable financial institutions to include transfer companies like Western Union and redefine account to include wire transfers. At that point, illegal aliens will not be allowed to wire money outside of the United States unless they prove documentation that they are indeed legal. That would effectively cut off $24 billion of aid going back to Mexico, which they'd have to make up for on their Social Security net. What that means is, effectively, Mexico can either pay $10 billion to build a wall or $24 billion to a bunch of poor Mexican citizens that suddenly had their only source of revenue cut off.
College Democrats?
So we're opposed to the wall for a simple reason that I will elaborate on, but the main reason is it's fucking stupid.
That's an argument?
When we talk about immigration into the United
Does he have a door? Does he lock it?
They're not running over the border as the stereotype paints a character of them as. They come here legally, they overstay their visas, they fly in, they overstay tourist visas, or they're working and overstaying a work visa. So the wall does not solve that problem that you're talking about with illegal immigration. Furthermore, I do not understand why there's this obsessive idea that Mexico should pay for that wall. The majority of legal immigrants, contrary to popular myth, are not from Mexico.
Also, I would like to bring back the point that you made about the UCI trying to implement sanctuary UCI. Anyways, being a slap to the face, I feel as though the wall is...
That guy doesn't like free speech.
Right. Next question, let's take someone from this side.
For the college Democrats, I have both for the amnesty and everything. The college Democrats, amnesty, do you believe advocating for citizenship or legal status? And how do you define between those two? And for the college Republicans, you are against amnesty. Do you believe in a situation to integrate them through citizenship or legal status, through military service or other social work? Thank you.
Could you please repeat the question?
Amnesty, are you advocating for citizenship or legal status, and how do you define between those two?
So when we're talking about amnesty, it's both. So to become a citizen of the United States, first you have to have legal status. So without first giving people legal status, it is impossible for them to then become citizens. So when we talk about amnesty, first we want to give legal status to those undocumented migrants who are here, and then we want them to have a pathway to citizenship.
We already have one.
So we find giving citizenship to people here legally an insult to the people who had to work hard to come here legally. And in terms of how we would try to integrate the people who are here legally but want to do it the right way, the best way to do it would be to go back to their home countries and then reapply again. And also you mentioned military service. I would be open to something along the lines where somebody can serve their country for a given number of years and come back and be eligible for legal status and maybe
I'd say no to that.
But at the very least legal status so that their kids can become citizens. I would consider military service to be an acceptable enough debt to repay for breaking the law.
Thank you very much. The next question will be right over here.
Yeah. Shortly after the election, there was this huge group of people, and they were arguing with me and about immigration and race and everything. And speaking about race, this is what really turns me off, is that why in the world is diversity and mass immigration only happening in white countries? You know, we always talk about illegal immigration being a racial issue. What about the illegal immigration that's going on in Europe? They always say this is natives' land. What about Europe? Why does Europe have to suffer from Muslim invasion? Shouldn't the white people have their sanctuary in Europe? Come on, let's figure out a compromise.
Who was the question directed at?
Either of them. I mean, you know, this campus has a group for certain type of races, Hispanics, Asians, but there's no white group on campus. I'm not even European descent. If you want real equality, have a white group on campus or have no racial-based group.
Okay. So I guess whoever would like to begin by answering. Oh.
No, answer.
Wait, you can't respond to this?
Come on.
Just respond to it. Do your best.
What about European immigration? Talk about European immigration.
Can we get some clarification on what the specific question is there?
Yeah, if you believe there are white supremacists who want illegal immigrants out, shouldn't the white supremacists at least have a sanctuary in Europe?
Off topic.
No, it's not. It's true. Because, you know, other races preserve their own heritage.
For clarification, the topic of this debate is on United States immigration.
Okay, then let's talk about E-Verify then. E-Verify. Should we implement E-Verify on welfare programs and on employment? How about that? E-Verify.
That should be easy.
Okay, whoever would like to respond first.
That didn't even come up. Good question.
Sure. Okay, so E-Verify, I think it's a good system on its premise, but the problem with it is computerized programs always have a tendency to not work well. And the problem is when you're dealing with 12 million people that are here illegally, that can be a big problem. The status quo works about it quite fine, but I would say that there needs to be immigration policy that prevents illegals from getting welfare. Because yes, they are able to get fake social security numbers.
Like Kevin DeLeon.
No, okay. Yes?
Yep.
Actually, yes.
That's a good point.
Okay, yes, that's actually true. But when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, we want to look at policy that actually helps people in the long run, which we're about helping American citizens, not just about hurting illegals. Illegals are hurting Americans, and thus they need to be deported.
So we're against E-Verify because that would, earlier we cited the harsh immigration law passed in Georgia. And that caused a huge shortage in the labor market and ultimately was severely detrimental to the agricultural economy of that state. E-Verify would do a similar thing because unfortunately, undocumented immigrants, because they're undocumented, while they pay other taxes into our system, like income tax and sales tax, not income tax, E-Verify would be a way to weed out undocumented immigrants and have their legal status realized, and we're against that.
Our next question is going to be over here.
This question is for the College Republicans only. Are you guys familiar with the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986?
Do you have a specific, yes, I'm aware of it, or do you have a specific question?
Yeah, it's just in regards to the amnesty requirements, like if you guys are familiar with it, because it seems that you guys are suggesting that the United States just hands undocumented people like amnesty. But I feel that if you guys are familiar with this act, you would know that it's not like that.
I'm familiar with it in that, it wasn't exactly basically there were about 20 million people or something that received amnesty that way. And the problem is, in exchange for doing that, there was supposed to be a concession where we would get much more border security, so that this would not become a problem anymore. However, since we gave amnesty and we incentivized more people to try to come in illegally, this problem continued. So that way we're discussing this 30 years later now. So this is why we believe very strongly that amnesty is the wrong way to go, because it's not going to solve the problem of how do we make sure we don't have people coming in illegally. Because I think illegal immigration is bad in and of itself for everybody involved, both for the country taking them in, but also for the immigrants themselves. Because what kind of livelihood could they expect if they have to live in the shadows their whole lives? We think it's best for them to try to come here legally. They have to go through the process. It's a little bit longer, but it's best for everybody.
Hello, how are you doing? So I want to kind of assess the economic factors of amnesty. There has been studies done with economic models, particularly CGE, which is a computable general equilibrium model. And that model specifically focused on how policies would change the current situation of the country. So it's policy is a lot of feasibility. Model is a lot of feasibility of policies. Based on this model, focus on a specific county, but its studies did find that in LA County, amnesty or comprehensive immigration reform of amnesty, as they call it, would bring 1.5 trillion additional GDP over the next 10 years to the U.S. And increase it by 0.84%. It would have a significant increase in California in general, a 1.9 billion increase just for LA. And then also, they also conducted a study on, just having, legal status, but not necessarily providing amnesty. And they found that it will only increase it by 0.44% and only bring 792 billion GDP over the next 10 years. And finally, they found for mass deportation it would decrease the economic GDP by 110 trillion over the course of 10 years. So I want to understand, what the college Republicans or you guys think about how this model assesses the situation, or if it's a valid model.
Perfect. Right, so to answer this question, it's largely methodological. So for one, have you ever gone to East LA? Does it look like it's a great place? And the answer is no, because there's no way to keep these people out of poverty. They go back into poverty and they continue to cycle welfare. Now the problem is if you cross-apply earlier what I talked about, they begin to then take from those welfare systems, and then on net, it begins to take away. So yes, you will see a slight increase in the population's ability to spend in the economy, but you'll see a larger net deficit because we have to pump money back into welfare. So on balance, it's bad. Remember what I did a little exercise with my college Democrat friends over here about the difference between 10 and 90, or 90 being the net deficit. That's a big difference. So at the end of the day, it's net benefit analysis. And then on top of that, remember when you're looking at counties, those economic models are skewed because they take previous correlations and attempt to define them in a way that is beneficial or is going to increase the same. We don't actually know that. It's purely assumptive. And on counties, I have a serious problem because then you could potentially be comparing Santa Ana and HB, and that's not an actual empirical analysis.
I just want to note that this model has been known to be impartial.
Okay, it's wrong, but okay.
Was your question also directed at the college Democrats or just the Republicans?
I'd like to ask her.
I would just like to make a comment on what you had mentioned about the mass deportation costing America also billions. In developing trillions, yeah. In establishing mass deportation, we would also have to spend a significant amount of money on private prisons that hold people for years and years and years. We will be providing for them for years before they are actually deported. So, I mean, would you rather them be working, contributing to our society, and filling jobs that help citizens, or would you rather them be sitting in a prison consuming money?
Okay, thank you. Next question, there was one up here.
This is directed
Raise my
to
hand
the
for 5 minutes.
Democrats. So if I'm an illegal immigrant, rephrase. If an illegal immigrant is an undocumented citizen, if I sold drugs, would I be called an unlicensed pharmacist?
Yes. Eek.
I'll just repeat it for you. So if an illegal immigrant is an undocumented citizen, if I sold drugs, would I be called an unlicensed pharmacist?
Is there a broader point that this question is getting at?
Oh.
I just want you to answer yes or no.
This isn't by mockery.
Oh, brother.
You can, I will decide that that's non-topical. However, if you want to respond to it, you may.
We're not prepared to give an educated answer to that question.
Can we give an answer?
No, the question was.
Can I redirect it to them? To the Republicans?
You may, if it's topical.
Answer. Go for it.
Okay, sure. Yeah, you would be, because by their logic, and as you clearly showed, there's a logical fallacy here, one crime is to another. To put it most simply, if you commit a crime, then you commit a crime. It is not that you're an unauthorized person or some vague terminology that's brought up. So by their same, I guess we could say a murderer, serial killer, was an unauthorized butcher.
I've waited patiently.
There's no claim to congruency here. And really what the college Republicans are speaking, yes, we're mocking them because what they're saying doesn't make any sense. But what it comes down to is crimes are crimes and they should be treated as such. And there's an empirical reason they're crimes. They take from the system, they commit crime. We even brought up facts that they disproportionately rape in sanctuary cities. These are full facts. And the reason we bring these up is there are problems when you have people like unlicensed pharmacists that they negatively affect the population. So what we're speaking for is simple, practical policy.
Okay, thank you. You wanted to ask a question?
Sure I do. Okay.
My name is Arthur Schaper. I'm a member of the Remembrance Project. We're a 50-state organization that provides support, financial and moral, for family members who've lost loved ones to illegal aliens. So my question to the Democrats, what would you like to tell the parents of Catherine Steinle, Reuben Morphine, and the average of 25 Americans a day who are killed by illegal aliens? And for the Republicans, though, I'm not going to let you off easy. So there was an amnesty bill in 2013. 13 Republicans voted for it. Why? Start with the Democrats, please.
So when we're talking about children of native-born citizens murdered by undocumented immigrants, I'd like to remind you and everybody in the audience that undocumented immigrants are disproportionately the target of hate crimes and murder by native-born Americans, the murder rate for undocumented immigrants and even legal immigrants is higher than the reverse.
I would also like to note that you cannot generalize an entire population based on circumstances that you are aware of and close to. I do understand that those may be serious circumstances, and I would like to condolences to those families, but that does not, you cannot generalize an entire population based off of that.
You didn't answer the question. What would you like to tell the parents?
I'm sorry that
they didn't answer the question. Okay. Republicans, I had the question.
I got smacked yesterday by an illegal.
I asked a question to the Republicans.
And cut it.
We're going to keep it topical. Thank you.
That was topical.
Please avoid speaking without the microphone. Thank you.
All right. So, Arthur, to answer your question, I could probably. I guess the reason why they did that is they thought it was like some political game to try to like get more support from Hispanic Americans maybe, and maybe they think that some of the economic arguments for the bill might be worth it. Personally, myself, I disagree with that decision. I would not have voted for it had I been in the Senate, obviously, because of the reasons that we stated before, and also because it's an economic net loss. And worst of all, it re-incentivizes even more illegal immigration.
Right, so a final thing on this too, when looking at legislation in Congress, it's incredibly complicated because statutory requirements at times are vague, they're very long, things like that. Now I disagree, there should not be amnesty, and those Republicans are in the wrong. But when it comes down to it, we need to remember when we're talking about legislation in general, we look at the specific problems in it, because legislation is very long, it's lengthy, so try not to generalize legislation because it's so complicated.
I know.
Thank you very much.
Are you going to run for U.S. Senate, Rob? That answer.
If you want to ask another question, you have to raise your hand.
Sorry.
All right, next question.
Sorry.
So, given that the Republican Party, specifically in California, is facing a shrinking voter base among immigrant communities, specifically among Latinos, we also have empirical evidence to show that millennials are among the least involved in the Republican Party in voter registration as Latinos. So, considering the traditionalist social values predominantly held by immigrants and community members of Latin American descent, do you think that the Republican Party can afford to take such a hardline stance on immigration, given that that Latinos are becoming an ethnic majority in the state of California?
Yes, they can, because Trump won.
Right. So to answer your question, we need to reach out to them, and we need to increase our voter engagement with the Hispanic community as well as other communities in the state. But supporting amnesty and thinking that this is somehow going to lead us into the promised land, number one, it's a complete fallacy because there's institutional loyalty to the local Democratic parties in these areas already. And number two, more importantly, it's kind of insulting to say that you can just dangle a piece of candy or amnesty in this case towards a group of voters and assume that they're just gonna automatically support you because of that. Or to assume that these people are single issue voters. That's definitely not the case. Some of the most conservative people that I know happen to be of Latino descent, and they happen to live in sanctuary cities, and they see the damage that's being done to them with these policies. They see the crimes that are happening that the police are not enforcing because somebody in Sacramento decided it was politically incorrect to do. So we need to tackle those issues, and we need to actually be tougher on crime in order to protect the people who are here legally.
I think that's the end of the time. Were the Democrats, was the question also for them? Okay.
I actually would like to add something to that. I commend that a large proportion of these populations choose to vote Democratic and not to vote Republican because they're siding with the party that represents their interests and acknowledge that they are contributing members of our economy that deserve to be acknowledged as such.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
This question is more aimed towards the college Republicans, but I do welcome the college Democrats to respond as well. So today in this debate, you've mentioned a lot about these background checks and implying, correct me if I'm wrong, implying that these background checks would happen before they entered the country, meaning no criminal action in this country yet. But with these background checks, how does that account for corrupted governments, such as where my family is from in North Korea, where my grandfather, who's a refugee, is labeled as a political criminal. So how did the background checks that you've been referencing this debate affect the status of someone able to come to this country?
That's a great question.
And this was directed at the...
Directed at the college Republicans, so I do want to hear from the college Democrats as well.
Thank you.
All right, so one of the primary problems when it comes down to this is that the system itself has difficulty tracking where everyone goes, which is really why I'm against amnesty. But when it comes down to looking at places like North Korea and political refugees coming from that area, the question is not so much can we decipher if they're criminals or not. The question is more of what is the history of that specific person. Because in a lot of cases, people they give answers to what they want to do. For instance, a lot of terrorists that come from the Middle East, they say things on social media that indicate whether they're going to commit terrorist actions. That's simply factual. We see that in Europe in a lot of cases. When it also comes down to it, I'm not saying the system is perfect, but we do have pretty good background checkers. And I would say the empirical evidence shows that with extreme vetting, we can mitigate the possibility that these people will be committing crime, or in the worst case, like the Middle East, terrorism.
I think it's also, in talking about your grandfather, that being labeled as a political criminal and not being able to be accepted into the country based on the background checks, when in such case I believe you bringing it to attention, is saying that he has not been a contributor to such political actions. So it's kind of making the point to the background checks that are currently being done not actually being what you say they are.
Thank you. Let's take another question. Let's go somewhere. Let's go over here.
Hello. So I have a question for college Democrats and Republicans. So, to college Democrats, you said that we should give undocumented immigrants legal status and then eventually citizenship. So what about documented immigrants or like legal visa holders who already applied for citizenship or a green card? Should we automatically give them citizenship? Also to college Republicans, you said that illegal immigrants should be deported, right? But what about people who came here legally and then overstayed visa and then they married, they applied or they married to like a citizenship holder and like a U.S. citizen and they became a citizen or like they tried to become a citizen? Should we deport them or like what should be the line?
Who would you like to answer first? Okay, we'll just go Democrats first, and Republicans.
Our personal view is that in those who are already hold legal status and are working towards citizenship, the aim is to get those who are undocumented to the same legal status and then have them all go through the same process of citizenship. It should be a collaborative thing so that it's not only them just skipping ahead of them and immediately getting citizenship. They should both be brought to the same legal status and then both into citizenship.
So to preface this question, I am never in favor of damaging families at all, because families are what make up America. Families are what create strong democratic institutions, and families, most importantly, are what create strong children. That being said, unfortunately, I cannot delineate between people who break the law. In fact, the immigration offices, would likely catch such a scenario before it happened. But if it did, courts and our justice system has a way to solve such discrepancies. So it depends on the contextual analysis that is happening at the time. And I would say that would be an answer best solved by a justice, because it depends on the context in which they came to this country. Especially if they're crossing the border illegally, unfortunately, you have to go back.
So this question is primarily to college Republicans, but college Democrats can add their input. So my understanding of your platform is that you wish for there to be a wall built to keep out this kind of huge flow of illegal immigrants that are coming in and crossing the border. So what do you say then to the Pew Research statistics that say that the unauthorized immigrants crossing the border is at a net zero and has been so for the past 2 years? So this wall that we're trying to build
God
that
bless
could
Donald
cost
Trump.
upwards of $15 billion seems to be obsolete and kind of just a political for the current regime and kind of otherize a certain group. So please, I would like to hear your input, and if College Democrats would like to comment, that would be great.
Yeah.
All right. First off, I don't know what year you got that data from, because at some point while the economy was like in the tank, like around 2009, 2010, net inflow did go down, but it has risen up again recently, especially after 2013 and 2014 when they announced proposals for amnesty.
So to answer that question on the data specifically, for one I asked you, how do you collect data on people you don't know coming over? That doesn't make any sense. So when it comes to people crossing the border, we're not entirely sure. But we can tell the problem. You know why? Because the voters speak for us. And when the voters say there's a problem, there's a problem. To also critique the methodology behind that, there's a number of statistics showing that sanctuary cities are growing, that institutions from illegal immigrants taking welfare are growing. The problem is getting worse. So I ask this question to everybody. If it is true that illegal immigrants are leaving this country naturally, then why do we keep paying more and more and more for them?
Yeah, both of us would like to add something briefly to that. Just to bounce off what Kimo said, actually the voters do not approve that approach. Overwhelmingly, the current administration did not win the popular vote. Neither did the current majority in the House of Representatives, so that argument is fallacious. We'd also...
Voter fraud.
I'd also like to add Anna's comment about and go back to what I was saying earlier about the ASCCI. You made a remark that it was a slap in the face, and in addition to the idea of the wall being more, as she said, political rhetoric, slap to the face, as we have at a net zero people coming in here crossing the border.
Thank you. You were waiting.
Yes,
Well, just to give some background, yesterday I was at some sort of city council meeting, and there were a bunch of people with these signs saying white people should go back to Europe. Apparently something about us stealing some sort of land or something. And I'm wondering, why should we want to import people, right, into this country who think that we stole land from them, right? That they think we wronged them. Why should we want people who hold those views to be in this country? Because many of the people who are, quote, undocumented immigrants, and I guess this is for the Democrats, but the Republicans can comment too, why would we want people, which many of these illegal immigrants are, who view that America stole their land and view also that America owes them something because we supposedly stole land from them in a conflict that happened about 150 years ago? So that's my question.
I think it's important to pay attention to the history of the United States and the Europeans coming to the country and taking land away from Native Indians already here. I don't believe that it's necessarily immigrants coming from other countries claiming that we are stealing land from them, as we have been here for hundreds of years. We have worked with the Native Americans, though there has been some recent issues regarding that. It is not direct. These people are not coming here and claiming that we are taking their land away from them. I don't think that that's a valid argument to say that we shouldn't be allowing them here, because that's not necessarily what they're claiming.
And I'd also just like to touch on the connotation of your question, that we would discriminate against people based on their political views to enter this country. That's unconstitutional and something that we're strongly against.
We don't want commies. We don't want communists coming in.
All right, so I wouldn't exactly call this like a broad assessment of like the entire group, but we fully and completely condemn these protest organizations who seek to do nothing but divide and to try to like create a race war between Latinos and whites for one. But I would also like to say that this kind of goes back to the problem of what happens when you incentivize illegal immigration and you don't stop the problem at its root. You have people who don't assimilate, mainly because they can't, because you live in the shadows your whole life, because that's all you can ever really do as an illegal immigrant when you try to skip the line to get in illegally. So I think this is just yet another example of why we need to curb illegal immigration.
Tom Christensen was talking about Peraza.
And try to encourage them to apply legally as well. Because if that's the case, then you're just breeding groups that can't assimilate and that have resentment towards the countries that they came to.
Thank you very much.
Let's see. We're going to take people who are asking their first question before repeat questions.
Oh, yes, yeah. If you have a repeat question, we'll be giving preference to first-time questions. So I'll start over here.
All right. So this is a question mostly for you guys, the Democrats. I mean, if you could talk also, whatever. All right. So let's say that, okay, so your amnesty program, right? You're saying that, the people who are already here that are undocumented, you'll give them citizenship and legal status eventually, right? Yeah, okay. They're undocumented, right? You'll slowly. Yeah, okay. So say that Hillary Clinton won the presidency, and we're going to roll out this, new amnesty program. So I'm a legal immigrant, and how would you explain to me that? Oh yeah, by the way, you spent 6 years, a few $1,000s, and literally you could have just came here, sat down, and you would gotten the same thing. Could you just explain that to me real quick?
Right on.
So our position is not in conflict with anything you're saying. Where you're a legal immigrant and you have a pathway to citizenship in front of you, we're advocating that that same pathway to citizenship be given to people who are undocumented.
Also,
it's not the same thing.
In specific regard to your situation that you have proposed, I think that it's more, I think that in light of letting those who have spent the money and the time in order to get here and gain their citizenship, to know that these are also their brothers and sisters, people within the United States. We are all here together, and it should be important that we support one another. Granted, I may have gone, or you in the case, may have gone through more initially in the beginning, but this shows that we are making movements forward so that so that other people shouldn't have to go through that same process if they understand how difficult it is.
Oh, please. Oh, you bet you do.
So I find it hilarious that other people standing on the other side of the stage, they can't empathize with you. I wonder why. Because they don't care about they don't care about how the legal system works. They don't care that it is deeply disrespectful to charge you thousands of dollars and then just to hand it off to somebody. The reason being is most of the Democrats, and really this is a very cynical perspective, but it's true, they just want more voters. Because if I give you citizenship, are you going to vote for me? Yeah, you are. Exactly. That is the reason they're handing off the citizenship. Right. They don't care about you. They care about political expediency. And I come up here, and I'm not saying exactly popular views, but I'm saying how it really is. Because that is the strategy of the Democratic Party. The Republicans stand for virtue. The Democrats stand for expediency.
Maybe it's because we believe that the current charging of thousands and thousands of
right.
dollars is unjust.
Thank you very much. I see the question over here.
Thanks, sir. All right, so this is also a question, but I just want to make a comment. Earlier, college Republicans stated that they're in support of strong families. So I want to say, what do you say to the families that are participating in DACA and DAPA? DAPA having the judicial issue it's having right now, who cannot reach legal status but are willing to pay income taxes and aiding the economy.
Well, it is admirable that that these students do want to go into universities and everything. It just stands that they broke the law and they did it. They were here illegally.
Do you know what DACA and DAPA is?
Yeah, it's a treatment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So DACA doesn't state that you came here legally. DACA gives you an extension for a period of time. It's an executive order. And I'd be in favor of Trump repealing it. Why? Do you remember what I said in the beginning about the Congressional Budget Office? These people cost money to the system. They're here. They're not paying their fair share. Now, yes, they contribute some. They contribute $10 billion, as the Democrats said. But they take $100 billion. Do the math. They are stealing from our economy. They're taking from our people. They are the ones that are to blame for this. And yes, they're committing illegal action. That's a fact. And I'm sorry for their families. I really am. I never want families to split up. And I pray to God every day that we can have a system that actually cares for people. Because really, that's not what Democrats.
This guy probably has DACA status.
Do the Democrats have a response to the question as well?
He did.
I just want to point out some inaccuracy and maybe some discrepancy in what Timo is saying, because we appreciate the point of the College Republicans that you do not want to split families up. We agree with that, and that's exactly why we believe that we can acknowledge that laws in this country are unjust, especially our immigration laws. And we do not believe that anybody should be deported if their families are here.
Thank you very much.
Baloney. They didn't believe that 10 years ago.
Okay, we got a question over here.
My question is towards the College Republicans.
This is a biased audience.
In the debate, you mentioned that you would restrict giving legal status to immigrants who are the best of the best. But as the College Democrats mentioned, undocumented immigrants actually make up a huge portion of the workforce with regards to jobs that current American citizens don't actually want to take.
That's a lie.
Like, for example, agricultural jobs, low skill manual labor. So my question is, wouldn't restricting legal status to the best of the best actually result in those immigrants taking American citizens' jobs? The jobs that actual American citizens want because they're better.
Okay, first I would like to say that while there are some economic contributions from those who are here illegally, there are much greater economic costs. As we've discussed earlier, they've contributed 10 million towards the economy, and they've cost 100 billion. Do the math. One is 10 times greater than the other. And as for agriculture, we're not saying that we're against guest worker programs. I think those should continue with great checks on.
If he doesn't know how to spell something, why is he here?
But it's kind of interesting. A lot of the supporters of the Democratic policies here have more or less reduced illegal immigrants to saying, oh, they just do the work that nobody else wants. Isn't that very patronizing and disrespectful to their potential? It's almost like you want a permanent underclass. And frankly, that is completely counter to the values of the American dream. And as an immigrant myself, I'm particularly ashamed to hear that.
For the sake of time, if you don't have a comment to make, then you don't have to, just because we're trying to get as many questions as possible. But if you have something you really want to say, then you can say it. Okay. So we're only going to have time for 2 more questions, most likely, due to the lack of time. Okay.
Hi. Okay, yeah, this one's mostly focused on the college Republicans. So you say you're about law and order to enforce current laws, but it also seems like you're not against changing laws because you seem to be fine with revoking birthright citizenship. So don't really, so don't really say that you're for enforcing current laws if you are for changing some laws in accordance to this. Okay, but it also seems like to deal with this problem of having a bunch of people here not with it, I guess legally, yeah. You could also just change other laws about their legal status. So early on in the 2017 election, I looked at Paul Ryan's
2017
website, and he had a certain policy for giving legal status and a pathway to citizenship for undocumented immigrants. So long as they met certain conditions, such as registering themselves into a system and having a one-strike policy and not allowing them to have benefits that are reserved for citizens. It wouldn't allow them to become citizens before other people immigrating legally, so it's not like they're cutting in line. Okay. Okay, whoa. But it seems like after Trump got elected, Republican policy shifted to something more nuanced and more nationalist.
Thank God.
It seems like.
Is there a question?
Yeah. Okay. So it discourages illegal immigration by making the deportation process more efficient and illegal immigration more difficult. But it doesn't change the problem that the reason people illegally immigrate is exactly because the legal immigration process is too inefficient. How do you explain this shift to seemingly simpler, unnuanced policies? And do you think it addresses the root problem of why people immigrate illegally in the first place?
Ask your frickin' question.
So to answer that question first, most, I said the law should be interpreted as the Supreme Court said. So yes, they get birthright citizenship right now. They do, because that's what the court said. Do I want to change it? Absolutely. And there's nothing wrong with changing the law. What makes an institution legitimate is when they have a process of reform.
What I find especially interesting is the Republicans are a minority, and you have two white Democrats. Who's the party of diversity?
I would disagree. I would say the policies now are much better. And via Paul Ryan, I don't agree with everything Paul Ryan does.
Right.
Clearly, he's not exactly my side of the Republican Party. Now, he's a fine guy, but there's not everything in his policy that should be advocated or implemented. So that would be my response to the Paul Ryan question.
You know, the Democrats stacked this room, and the Republicans are knocking it out of the park.
So we have one more question. Sorry, Alex. We wanted to get to all the questions. We apologize that we weren't able to get to everybody.
Give everybody a chance.
Hi. So I'm actually doing research on college Democrats and college Republicans at every UC school. So it's been cool going to all the UC schools. But my question is, so with this debate on immigration and I guess in some part a vision of America, in what vision of America do you think Democrats and Republicans agree upon? And what vision do you think they disagree upon? And do you think these are ultimately
Great question.
compatible or conflicted?
Is this directed specifically about immigration now, or?
Yeah.
On topic.
Yeah.
Okay, so specifically in regards to immigration, please.
So I think, despite our differences over what we'd like to see U.S. immigration policy look like, I think we do have one huge area of common ground, and that's specifically that we'd like to see a better United States, a better job market, a better economy, one that benefits all people. And I think
Democrats don't want that.
we agree with them on. We want the economy of our country to be better, but our differences lie in how we get there.
And I guess to like add to Cash's point, I would say that on immigration, both parties are doing what our idea of like the initial American dream is. The idea that anyone can come here and succeed. We just happen to have different ways of doing it, and like sometimes, like for example, with us, we care more about the process, and we want to make sure that everybody comes here legally so they could actually be able to achieve those goals. Whereas I guess with Democrats, it's more about like trying to keep families together. It's more of like an emotional or moral argument, I would suppose.
Yes,
but
emotional.
At least with us, we want to make sure that we continue America's legacy of being a country where anyone can succeed. We just want to make sure that it's a fair process for everyone and nobody cheats the system.
Thank you very much to both teams, and thank you for all the audience members who gave questions. We apologize we couldn't get to all the questions. We're now going to have closing. We're now going to have closing statements from each team. Oh, sorry.
We have to keep it to 1 minute.
Yeah, just because of the sake of time, we're going to ask you to keep it to 1 minute if possible. We can begin, since at the start of the debate we began with the Democrats, we will begin the closing statements with the Republicans, and then we'll move to the Democrats.
So what this boils down to is pragmatism versus virtue signaling. And the reason it comes down to that is because the Republicans propose economic policy. We propose articles where we specify the methodology. We proposed a 3-pillar plan that will counter every part of the immigration plan, whereas the Democrats believe everyone can get together, hold hands, and have a kumbaya circle. And when it comes down to it, there is no evidence that will ever occur. There's still going to be criminals. There's still going to be crime. The economy is still going to be damaged. They have not answered any of the questions we've given about the methodology of their articles. They haven't answered a single question about the economy except the agro industry, even though when I showed them the math, 100 minus 10 still is 90.
Yep.
So there's still a $90 billion deficit.
I was a Democrat until I learned how to count.
They didn't even answer the fact of the cost of amnesty, $2.3 trillion. So when it comes down to today, when you pick between parties, you're picking between pragmatic policy and virtue signaling.
There you go.
We would like to restate that we do not support laws based on racist political rhetoric, demonizing human beings.
These guys push race all the time.
This is working against what our country stands for. Though we both agree to represent what our country stands for, it is important that we do not discriminate others in doing so.
Yeah, we'd like to reiterate that we support the people that
They are discriminating.
that have been living
They discriminate against law-abiding immigrants.
And we support amnesty for them. Really quickly,
Illegal is not a race.
Our weekly meetings are every week.
A lot of them are Asians too.
Yeah, they're not from Mexico.
And why do you think Alaska has an illegal immigration problem?
They do?
Yes. Why? Where are they coming from? Russia.
So if you'd like to join us tomorrow
Deport
night
them.
at 5 p.m. from EBC, you can talk to Aya, who's our president.
The whole Democrats.
Thank you. There's no cross-examination on this portion.
Oh, you're just getting started.
All of you so much for coming out. Could you please give a round of applause?
Bravo. A lot of Democrats.
Also, for those of you interested, so the Transpolitical Forum, we hold informal debate at our weekly meetings. Something like this, just scaled down a bit. If you like getting involved, if you like seeing cross-party politics, is what we do here tonight. We meet Monday nights at 6 p.m. in Social Science Lab 159. Find us on our Facebook page.